Welcome to the Get Good at Presenting podcast with Lee Jackson.
Hi, and welcome to Get Good at Presenting, the podcast with myself, Lee Jackson. Today, I've got with me the CEO expert, Roger Harrop. I've known Roger for many years. We've done various things around the PSA and other things together. And Roger is a great guy to chat to. And I'm going to just interview him a little bit about what he does as a speaker, his work internationally, but also what he takes with him and some of the technical aspects, some of the practical stuff as well, because I know that you've given me feedback that you love the practical element of this podcast. So welcome, Roger.
Hi, Lee. Lovely to be with you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good. How's Oxfordshire? Are you all right?
Yeah, it's a bit, it's supposed to be hot today, but it isn't. So there we go. No problem.
It's like that in the north anyway, no problem at all. But Roger, just the list of the podcast, just tell us, you do a lot of international speaking, is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've now spoken in, it's a bit sad I keep a record, but 49 countries. So I've got to crack 50 this year.
You're going for the 5-0, yeah? And 49 countries. And obviously the obvious question is you've spoken in English in those 49 countries, right?
Yes, I don't speak any other language. No, just English. So sometimes it's with translators. That's the difficult bit. But most of the time, it's everyone speaks or hears English. But I mean, just I suppose a tip before you start, really, you do have to be a bit careful about the language you use in the sense of you need to keep it simple in some countries where, English is a second or a third language.
Yeah, well, it's probably good advice for England as well, to be honest.
Only in the northeast.
Only the north. Yeah. But actually, I do. I mean, maybe you agree, Roger. But I do think sometimes people overcomplicate speaking, and they probably use flowery language that's not really required. You know what I mean? So simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, I quite agree, Lee. And also, just too formal. It's rather like we're doing now. Just standing on that stage, you should act as if you're having a chat with people and sharing stuff, sharing knowledge that you have.
Well, I was. So some of your stuff's been very memorable over the years, and I've seen you do various little bits and bobs. But one of the things that I really remember is the helicopter stuff.
Sure.
So just tell the listeners about the helicopter, because I love that whole concept. Okay.
So, I mean, let me start by just saying my audience needs to be people running business or involved in running business. So that's from a one-person startup all the way through to the biggest sort of corporate in the world. Yeah. So it's all about business and business growth. And what I try and get people to do is, as you say, Lee, is I use this phrase, get up in the helicopter, staying in the helicopter. In fact, I've got that registered. I actually own that phrase now.
Wow.
Which is all about just looking at the big picture. Because if you can get up there, mountains become molehills. That is the way it works. And you can see stuff you don't see otherwise. But, just every day of the week, we get sucked into the mud and the bullets. That's just sort of the human beast. And I would say these days, more than ever before, with the speed that stuff is changing, whether it's technology or markets, or it's changing so quickly, I think business leaders have got to spend even more time than ever before up there in the helicopter. It's not the whole time. Occasionally you have to come down and land and get into the detail, of course. But it's having that discipline to spend time getting up there and just looking over the horizon and keeping business simple. Business schools and I don't get on very well, if I'm really honest, because for me, they're in the business often of making business complex, when in fact it's really simple. If someone's got something to sell, somebody wants to buy, and maybe someone has to make something. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, people spend 4 years studying for an MBA, and maybe that can be done in a couple of days, And
sure, absolutely.
We're being really blunt about it,
I couldn't agree more, Lee. Absolutely.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's an interesting one, that. But the helicopter thing, I guess I've used the phrase as like, there's two sorts of people. Some of them are eagles and some of them are ducks,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very similar thing, isn't it? You want to soar a little bit higher, and you see things differently from a helicopter, right?
No question. Whatever it is you're looking at, and it isn't just about your business. It actually gets the stress off your shoulders somewhat as well. If you can really start looking a bit further ahead and keeping stuff simple, you can work out that you're, I don't know, perhaps going down a cul-de-sac or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So it's good for health as well, I would argue.
Yeah, and it's that whole idea of, are you working in your business or on your business, isn't it? That kind of separation over the two.
I must tell you a story, though, Lee, if I may. Have we got time for a quick story?
Sure.
I was speaking in Pakistan, in Islamabad, and it was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months after Al Qaeda had been oiked out by the Americans by their helicopters.
Yeah.
And I was doing a one-day masterclass called "Staying in the Helicopter," and I started off, and then suddenly this guy put his hand up and interrupted, which is very unusual in Pakistan. He said, "Mr. Roger," "Mr. Roger, we are very sensitive about helicopters at the moment. Would you mind, just for today, could it please be entitled 'Staying in the Hot Air Balloon'?"
Is that right?
So that's what it had to be all day. No mention of helicopters.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's taking in the sort of local, taking on the local stuff, isn't it? And making sure you don't offend people and stuff like that. So you've worked in some pretty, well, some people would say some scary countries, right? Some countries.
Yeah, America, for example.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have. I've done an awful lot in, as it turns out, Muslim countries in particular. But yeah, I've had in Nigeria. I had an armed guard that met me at the airport and followed me in a jeep with all the lights flashing, which I would have thought would bring attention to us.
Wow.
And then I discovered that they dropped me at the wrong hotel. And I had to make my own way to the right hotel all on my own. How's that go?
Yeah. So it looked really good, but it didn't really work out in the end when you're dragging your suitcase along to the hotel down the road. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So tell me that story as well. Wasn't there a guy who recognized the helicopter sound on your laptop?
Oh, yes.
That made me laugh.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? As a speaker, sometimes this particular little story, I remember. Is the name of Phil Van Hoosen, who was the president of NSA, and I was in Germany, I think, at the Speakers Association there, and I gave my little speech, and I said this story on the stage, and afterwards he said, "You know what? That was an absolute gift, wasn't it?" And I'd never looked at it like that, but it was, because basically what happened was I have. For my signature speech, I have the noise of the helicopter when I say "staying in the helicopter," and and I've also got a visual, a GIF that I had made where this helicopter goes up the screen and you get the noise. And absolutely genuinely once, this guy in the audience stood up and said to me, "Excuse me," he said, "but that helicopter's a Huey and the noise is an Apache." And, and it's brilliant for me because it does two things for me early on in my speeches and my masterclasses. Firstly, it adds a little bit of humor, but also I'm able to say, now there's someone focused on the detail, isn't there? And everyone has a laugh and the message perhaps gets in even better. So it's just as I say, it was a gift. It was an absolute gift.
So there's people somewhere who memorize the sound of the different helicopters. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's the thing, isn't it? Right. Amazing.
Quite.
Great. So you travel internationally. So you're on the road, whether it's whether you're in Dulwich or whether you're in sure. Dubai. Yeah. You're on the road a lot. So you did this great talk. I think it was at PSA Yorkshire. That's a professional speaking association in Yorkshire, where you basically brought your pilot case with you. The kind of black pilot case thing, and then you pulled out of the bag some of the things that you basically say, "I never travel without these things." Yeah. So as a speaker on the road, I thought it'd be great to go through and do a kind of what's in your bag, Roger. And I've got my bag here as well. It's not a video, it's obviously audio, but so you do a few of yours. And then
I don't have all the bottles of Newcastle Brown that you've probably got, Lee.
I live in Leeds. It's 2 hours away from Newcastle.
Oh, right. Sorry.
It will be Tetley's here, Roger.
Oh, right. Okay.
So tell us. Yeah. Tell us what things do you never ever go without? What do you take in your bag every time?
Okay. Well, to be blunt, it's all life support systems for a speaker. I mean, what I try and do, it depends, but most times when I'm going to do a gig overseas, I will always add a day on afterwards before I come home, because it is not unusual that I get a gig and I get a gig where I wouldn't have got it unless I've got all the gear. So literally in my bag, I've got everything. But the one thing I have that seems to surprise everybody the most is I have an extension lead, because if you've got an extension lead, it means you only need one adapter instead of having 4 or 5 adapters or however many you need these days. So one thing I never, ever don't take is an extension lead and one adapter.
So it's like a 4-way extension lead.
Yeah, exactly. A 4-way extension lead that goes in the bag.
And how long is the cable? 1 meter or 5 meters or?
No, it's a 3 meter, I think. the latest one I've got, which sort of seems to cover everything. And I find I use that in the hotel room as well, because, you know, you're wanting to plug in your Kindle and your phone and your laptop. You know, you use up those 4 ever so quickly. And indeed, even if you've got 4 adapters, you probably haven't got 4 sockets anyway in the hotel room. So, you know, it really is worth having.
Great, that's a good tip. I mean, I always carry one in the back of my car. I don't think I've carried one. I mean, I've done a couple of international gigs. I never really looked for those, but that's never been a massive thing of mine. But I will be doing in the next few years. But I will. That's one I've definitely got. And in fact, I bought a 3-meter one just a few days ago after your talk, Roger. Perfect. So take an extension lead. Great, practical. So what else have you got in your bag there, Roger?
Elastic bands. that really sounds odd, but I have an old business card. What do you call it? Holder. Box, full of plastic bands.
A card holder, yeah,
card holder, full of elastic bands, because I just think they're the best invention known to man. The number of times they've got me out of a hole of one sort or another. So elastic bands, a selection of batteries, which all sounds very silly, but you know, whatever it might be that you're recording something. It might be, I mean, something else I take, but I'm not suggesting everyone should, is I've got my own head mic and belt pack. So I definitely need spare batteries for that. Yeah. And you might have other things as well.
Now, are you okay getting this through security and stuff with batteries? Are they okay with that on batteries and stuff? Yeah.
I mean, my speaker bag never leaves my hand, you know, because it's so important to me. I won't let it go. But I tell you what, the one thing I had, I was leaving Dubai once. And, you know, I've got so much stuff in my speaker bag, as we're sort of talking about, that might, I don't know, look like bombs or or whatever. But the one thing the guy took off me was the extension lead. He said, you can't have it. I said, and I'm leaving Dubai, not going. I said, why not? No, it's not allowed. And I'm convinced to this day, I think when he left home that morning, his wife said, don't forget, I need an extension lead today. Because I can't think of any other reason, really, unless they're going to, you know, I suppose strangulation of the pilot or something. But there was plenty of other stuff that would do that. But hey, what's next on the list?
I understand.
Well, a memory stick that you have put your presentations on, your whatever it is, your copies of your handout, all of that. I try and have backups in 3 places. So I've got one in the cloud. I've got a memory stick that I keep with me with whatever it is I'm doing while I'm away, plus 2 others of my standard stuff. And then I also have a password protected area of my own website where I put it as well. So I've just got 3 locations. So, you know, you're covered no matter what.
Yeah, because laptops can be snapped. Sure. You know, they can be stolen. Yeah, and the cloud, I've got everything. I've just been syncing everything to the cloud. It's been costing me a fortune moving things around the cloud. But sometimes you can get to a hotel and the Wi-Fi is broken, so you can't get to the cloud, right?
Well, and even more than that, you know, there are some parts for example, Pakistan. I've mentioned Pakistan already, but you know, the power goes off fairly regularly, and broadband isn't all that good fairly regularly. So you know, you don't want to be. That will be it's somebody's law, isn't it? That will be the moment when you're wanting to download stuff and you just can't. So that's where, you know, having the memory stick covers that one. I mean, even South Africa. I just come back from a couple of 3 weeks ago. You know, South Africa are now having blackouts regularly, which means you can't get any of this stuff unless you've got something physical, as it were, with you. In other words, a memory stick.
Has this stuff ever completely failed, Roger? And have you just had to do it without slides, without notes and all that kind of stuff? Have you ever done it?
Well, yes. Again, I think it was India where I was doing a 1-day masterclass and the power went off for 3 hours. And I just kept going in the dark. I mean, you know, you have in the back of your mind, you know, the show must go on. And I just kept at it. And the applause I got when the lights came back on was unbelievable, because I was just doing what you and I are doing now, really, and was chatting to them. I couldn't see them. It was pitch dark, but that just seemed to me the right thing to do. So yeah, and in a way, it's a bit of fun. And I'm now referred to as the guy who kept going in the dark, you know.
Right.
So
I was just one of our colleagues is Celia Delaney, and
I know Celia.
She's a great speaker, and she just put up an article she found from Speaker Magazine of someone who basically they were doing a gig which was 45 minutes from their house, but they were booked for it was say a Wednesday. They were booked for the Wednesday. And then on the Tuesday, they got a phone call saying, "Where are you?" And the organizer had booked them the day previously and not told the speaker, so it wasn't her fault.
Right.
But she basically had to jump in a car, get there as soon as possible. She was 20 minutes late arriving for the speech. So she told the organizers to give them, I think she does like style stuff, what she should wear and that kind of thing. So she basically asked the audience to look at her website with before and after pictures that she has on her website for 15 minutes, and then got into the venue and walked onto the stage and did the presentation.
Fabulous.
Which is just amazing. But she said she left everything, the slides were at home. She didn't have anything to do. She was out shopping or something and then got this phone call, "You need to come now," kind of thing.
Sure.
So she's
and that's absolutely rightly. I mean, for me, that's what the word professional means. That's what we have to do. I mean, the other thing I had was in Dubai it was Mauritius for the Dubai company. It was a company conference, and I was supposed to be doing an hour. And literally 10 minutes beforehand, they said, "Oh, sorry, the next speaker's missed his flight. Would you do 2 hours?" And you just got to do it. You don't have the material necessarily immediately to hand. And I didn't. So you just got to do it. And half the trick is, of course, then is doing an awful lot more in audience interaction, perhaps. But
definitely. I turned up at one very similar thing where I turned up. They told me to do an hour. And then they ended up, well, no, it's 2 hours. Did we not mention that? No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. No.
So basically, I got them into group slots. I got them into groups every quarter of an hour. I get them into groups to discuss something, and that, I kind of padded it out. And people love interaction anyway, don't they?
Oh, they love it. Yeah. Something else, by the way, Lee, and I'm just reminded of this is that sometimes none of their tech works. I had that in Abu Dhabi once. And that's where the next item I'm going to mention that I carry everywhere, which people smile at when I say it, is I take a projector everywhere I go, no matter what no matter what size the event is, no matter what it is. And it has saved me so many times. I mean, I have one, you need, it's, 2,700 lumens. So I can do a room of 50 with that. So, I always have my own projector, and you would not believe how many times I either choose to use it or have to use it, to be honest.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter, how many times you say to this one in Abu Dhabi, it was a government organization, all very modern, all very everything. And I had told them, as it were, my needs and all the rest in terms of, which aren't extensive. And basically, none of it had ever got to the people I had to do anything. And I was presented with this great big, it was like a big TV, only a very, very big TV, which was linked. That was in Abu Dhabi, linked through to their people in Dubai.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to plug in with this, but no one had told me that the plugging in was something completely different from anything we've ever seen anywhere in the world, And anyway, we got it sorted in the end, but without my projector at one end and then them filming my slides off my projector, it would have been, I think it was 400 people across the two countries. It sort of wouldn't have happened, It's amazing.
Yeah, well, after hearing your talk, I mean, I had a really nice HD projector, an Epson HD, was really nice projector, because I'm a bit of a geek in those areas. And I actually got rid of that, sold that to a friend, and I actually bought a thin one like yours. So that now, because the other one was so big, it would just fill the whole bag, But the one you've got is quite thin, so it's only a couple of inches thick, isn't it? And
that's right, or maybe even less than that, inch and a half perhaps. But it's and it's pretty light, but it's got the power. It's getting that combination that's so important.
Yeah, so they're a little bit more expensive, those. I think it's an LED or an LCD, and it's an Epson. It's a sort of top end of the market, but basically the portability just makes a massive difference.
It does. Yeah.
So I've just bought a posh new bag. I've got like a little flight case, a custom made pilot case, basically, with a little bit of space in it, so I can put everything in that now. And because I've used various bags over the years, but when I saw your talk, was it 3 or 4 months ago, I thought I'm going to go for it.
It's worth it. Yeah.
And it was the end of the tax year, Roger, so it all worked. You know what I mean? So.
And you just put your prices up again, Lee, hadn't you? I know.
Of course, of course.
The other thing you need to go with that, of course, is a speaker. And probably, again, you need that even more than you need a projector.
Like an audio speaker, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, if the Spice Girls can't get their sound right, you know, you have to assume your clients can't either. So I've got this. I actually think they're not made anymore. It's called a Jawbone by Jambox or a Jambox by Jawbone. I don't know which way around it is. And it was designed by some ex-Apple engineers. And it is sort of half the size of a house brick. So it's a tiny little thing. But I can easily use it for 50 people in a room. It is remarkable, the sound from it. And I know there's now more modern versions of that. But again, it's a question of having something that's really small that has got the output. It also does, incidentally, just again, a little tip while I think of it. It is Wi-Fi, but I never use the Wi-Fi because I have a fair number of videos and the lips aren't synced with Wi-Fi. So I actually use a hard connection.
Definitely as an ex-DJ, I can definitely say plug it in.
You'd know that. Yeah.
If you've got an option, plug it in. Don't use Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Absolutely. And the Jawbone thing was a good speaker. I've got the two Bose ones. There's one's called I think it's called a SoundLink Color, and that's a really nice one. And it's a nice shape because it fits into a laptop bag. Yeah. It's sort of it's a nice size. And then I've got
those are really good, aren't they, Lee?
And I've got the Bose SoundLink Mini 2, I think it's called, which is even smaller, and again will fill a classroom size easily. And I even know people that put microphones into those as well. So.
Oh right, yeah.
Because they're not light. They're quite heavy. If you go to the market or somewhere cheap on eBay and you look for a speaker, you can get one for 20 quid. But it'll be light and it'll sound rubbish.
Yeah, that's right.
Basically, what you're saying is, like me, is spend a bit of money and get one that's going to last you and will actually fill a room. You know. Yeah,
and it's funny, isn't it? You know, when we're on stage, you know, one of the first things we're taught is, you know, make friends with the AV man because he can, or woman, he make you or break you. And then we'll go and buy ourselves a silly little speaker. You know, it's daft. The quality of our voice is actually really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a friend of mine used to do a song. He's a comedian guy, and he used a song called "The Man at the Back." And it was all about the guy at the back. Make friends with the guy at the back. And sometimes it's a woman, of course, but make friends with that person because that team, they make you look good. They put lights on you. Yeah. They make you sound good. When I was in a band, we had a few bad sound people, and there were blokes in those days, sound man, who maybe once or twice took a dislike to us, and they would deliberately make us sound bad. You know. Yeah. He was having a bad day that day. Do you know what I mean? So,
sure.
So that's good. That's good. That's a good portable speaker. That's a good tip. I use that. And any other things in your bag there, Roger?
Yeah, make sure you've got both HDMI and VGA connections. Neither of them are universal yet. Oh, I know something else. You never know when you might need to write on a flip chart on the stage, even if you haven't planned it.
Yeah.
Take with you a big marker pen. I mean, the jumbo marker pens, because nobody can see anything else. And the number of times I've seen that, you're probably the same, Lee, where, they do something on a flip chart and you can't actually see anything because they're just using an ordinary pen. But they're brilliant. You can get a pack of 5 through Amazon. And I, again, take those everywhere.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've got some for whiteboards. And I think Sharpie do a really big fat one. As well, right? I forget, but that's the sort of thing that you do leave in a hotel room, though, isn't it? And you
you need a box of 5. Yeah, mine's a Pentel permanent marker chisel point M180, but they're brilliant. Right. And then the other thing, of course, is blue tack or white tack. Because you never know. So
very good. That's good. Yeah. So let me see what I can add to that, Roger.
Yeah. Last week's sandwiches?
Yes. I've got a chicken sandwich just going off in my bag. So I take with me masking tape.
Oh, yes, of course.
Because masking tape doesn't pull up a floor like gaffer tape. But I use it for marking out the stage.
Yeah.
If I'm doing, and there's a little tip, which basically if you're using a projector, then you get there early, and to stop the projector being on your shirt, find out when it's not on your shirt and put a piece of masking tape on the floor.
Right.
And you know that you can go that far up to the projector without it being on your shirt looking silly. Yeah. So And sometimes I just put 3 or 4 strips of masking tape and I just tape them into my bag.
Excellent.
So I don't even have to take the whole thing with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Excellent.
And the leads and the clickers and stuff which I use, I'll put them on a Gridit board.
Mm-hmm.
A Gridit is a hard board with lots of elastic straps on it. I know our friend Stuart Harris mentioned them to me years ago, and I've got one of those. So I have a clicker. It's a key span clicker, and I have a spare clicker because you never know. And
I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you, Lee, but you need to have a spare clicker, a spare remote that uses a different tech to your main one. Again, there's a story I can tell you about that. But so I've got my main one is radio frequency, like most of them are, but my spare one is Bluetooth. So that if you get in trouble, then you've got an alternative.
Yes, the one I love is the radio frequency one. But sometimes when I'm in the city centre, say Leeds city centre or London, you sometimes get interference with radio frequencies.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely. I did a gig in Dubai in the Burj Khalifa, in fact. And I suddenly realised that I'd lost my audience because my slides were going all over the place, on, off, backwards, forwards. And something in the building was on the same frequency as my remote, which was a little bit difficult.
My word. That's like the old days of radio mics when they used to pick up taxi band radio. Do you remember that?
That's right. I'd forgotten that. Absolutely.
You'll suddenly be in the middle of a gig and they'll go, I'm coming around the corner now.
Yes, that's right. Wow.
So I've got all my Apple remotes there, and I do take an audio lead, which is a jack to jack, as we'd call it. That's a 3.5 to 3.5 jack. Some of the Apple leads, because you're a Mac user, I think, Roger, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
So you need that. So I have the leads that go from my Apple Mac to HDMI and to VGA. You don't have to pay the full price, actually. There's some nice ones online you can get now that are not full price. And also one that goes from my phone or iPad. So one of my backups is I could actually use my phone and project from my phone these days. But I haven't done yet, but it is there if I need it.
Sure.
So anything else in your bag? I can mention a couple of other things. Anything else in your bag?
So I think I mentioned my head mic, didn't I? Did it? Yeah. That I take a head mic everywhere. I've said that. No, I think that's my...
that's the head mic to plug into someone else's system, right?
Someone else's system, which works everywhere, in my experience, except France. Surprise, surprise, because they have their own system. And if you're in the US, you need to have a 60 cycle, what do you call it? The thing that you plug into the charger, adapter, whatever you call it.
Okay. It's different. I understand. Yeah. Different electricity because of that, right?
Yeah.
I understand. One thing I always carry in my bag as well, if I'm delivering, say, a full day, like a presentation skills day or something, I've got a couple of sets of cards, which is basically my whole day on a set of cards.
Yeah.
So it's an analog version of my whole day, really. I've got like 20 cards with an exercise on each card, which I drop in and out. And also the cards of actually, if everything failed, I could just use these cards, really.
Yeah.
And some of them just have one word on them, Like for you,
right.
One of them would just say helicopter,
Yes, sure.
Do you know what I mean? So,
absolutely.
So also if you're traveling, not just as a speaker, but getting a good set of headphones for travel, I think is good.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of music, a lot of podcasts.
Sure.
And I know a lot of people have Bose. I don't go for the Bose ones, actually. I've got the new Sony ones, which are really nice, long battery life. I think they're called something 1000 Mark III, I think, WM1000s.
Yeah.
And they're really nice, make plane journeys much more pleasant and train journeys. Sure. I've got a few props in here in my bag. I'm just going through my here.
Yeah, me too. I do magic tricks occasionally.
I've got my little clock, which you can hear now. I've got my little countdown clock, which I've used for years, and an extension lead and a few props. And I also I usually put in a little bit of chocolate as well.
Right.
You'd be amazed at how delegates give you better feedback if you put a bit of chocolate on the table, Roger, I found.
Very good, yes.
So if you're doing a small, if you're doing like 20 people, actually, maybe after lunch or mid-morning, just put a little bit of chocolate on the table. Be amazed at how that picks people up.
Yeah, very good, very good.
It's not because I'm boring, it's just because...
you just got in before me there.
I'm really boring, so I have to give them chocolate, otherwise they don't learn anything. Yeah.
Something else, Lee, I forgot to mention is your intro, have it laminated, make your intro as short as possible, and then make it half of that again, because MCs pathologically cannot read. And have it laminated so they don't lose it and they can't put it in their pocket. So I'll take with me. Actually, I have a stand of sort of 2 or 3 of those, as to whether I'm the only speaker or I'm the next speaker, and also where I am in the world. So there'll be one that says, and has regularly spoken here in, East Africa or whatever it is. So making it a little bit generic, but that's worth doing.
Yes, that's because, people might not know that, but actually having a written introduction saves a lot of hassle. And my favorite.
Sorry, go on.
If you don't have one, all sorts of things can happen. My favorite one is a colleague of ours, John Hatauka, who I've interviewed on this podcast. He had a brilliant one because no one can pronounce his name. I think his name is Polish in origin. So it's John Hotauka. So he got one introduced once as John Hot Oat Cakes.
Oh, lovely.
It's brilliant. And my other favourite one with John did as well. I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast, but I love this story. He got introduced once. He was at some Federation of Small Business type thing, and it was a guy in Yorkshire probably, and he was introducing. He was going, "Our next speaker is John Hatauka, and oh, look, he's VAT registered." That was how he was introduced. So,
tremendous.
They were obviously impressed that he was VAT registered, which I thought was quite cute.
Yeah. I've got on mine that I've spoken on 4 continents, and I had a bloke read that out as in 4 counties.
Okay,
just a bit different, isn't it? Something else, Lee, is a cork.
All right,
a cork. If you go on voice training, and everyone should, ideally with Chris over in the Wirral.
Chris, who for the listener? Who's that?
Oh, for heaven's sake! You see, I'm losing my memory today.
It's all right. Chris
Davidson. I'll get there. Chris Davidson. He's got his own studio, and I did a day with him, and it just transformed my speaking. I couldn't put it any other way. But one of the things that apparently, if you go into the green room in the BBC, where people are waiting to go on, no one's surprised to see everyone sitting there reading newspapers or whatever with a cork in their mouth, talking out loud. And what it is it's training the muscles of your jaw. As a result, the timbre of your voice changes, your whole voice changes. So I have a cork, because doing a lot of Muslim countries, there aren't many wine corks around that I can pick up. So I take one with me, and 10 minutes before I'm on, I will be round the back of the stage, reading something out loud holding a cork between my teeth.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah, right.
That's a new one for me. I thought you were going to say you had it for some kind of medical reason, Roger.
No.
But so you hold a cork between your teeth, and
basically wow. Chris's father was an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, and Chris is a physicist. So between them, basically what it's about is that the your actual jaw muscle is the most powerful muscle in your face, and it therefore takes over and doesn't allow the other ones to work. If you put a cork, or in fact your knuckle, bite it between your teeth and creak out loud like that, it does sound funny, but it stops the jaw muscle working and it gets the other muscles working. And, when I did it with Chris, when I had that day with Chris, he sort of videoed me before and after, and you cannot believe the difference in terms of the voice projection, the timbre of your voice, the whole bit, just by spending 10 minutes doing that. And as I say, apparently, anyone who's going on the radio or being interviewed on TV, it's just the normal thing that they do before they go on.
So you thought at the BBC in those green rooms it was everyone's been really excited, or maybe they were doing naughty things.
Yeah.
But actually they're all sat there with corks in their mouth.
Apparently, yes.
Yes. The lazy fox jumped over the whatever it was.
Whatever it was. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's brilliant. So thanks so much for that, Roger. That's really good advice on practical things to take with you while traveling as a speaker. Maybe before we finish, maybe you've got have you got a few tips for traveling internationally? Like, is it for everybody? Is there a few little do's and don'ts for international speaking? Maybe, Roger, you could give us.
Yeah, sure. The great big one in big flashing lights before you start doing international speaking is, can you answer the question why? You're not going to be paid as much, because no matter where you go, it's going to take 3 days. So you'll get the same fees you get one day in the UK for 3 days. So you're getting a third of your fee. So what's the point? There's a strong likelihood you won't see anything but the inside of aeroplanes and the inside of hotel rooms, and all that hassle. So you need to be answered the question, why would you do it? What you're doing it for? After that, I think, my general tips are you've got to train yourself from the moment you go in the airport door at one end to when you come out the other end to be sort of semi-comatose, basically, and allow yourself to be processed, because shit happens, basically, excuse me, and it happens more with international travel than anything else. I think the other thing I would say is from the moment you land to the moment you get back on the plane to come home, you're working. Never, ever, ever stop working in that whole time you're doing that. There are all kinds of opportunities wherever you are, either for you to give stuff to your client to do more than they expected, and therefore they want you back, but also to find other work, to do marketing. You're working. And I think that's I'm not saying don't take some time off to see the sights or whatever, but as it were, in your head, that's those 2 days. Those are fixed. The rest of the time I'm there, I am working, and there's all kinds of things you can be doing. Jet lag. Sorry.
So you carry on. Can you carry on? I've got a question.
No, I was just going to say jet lag. I have melatonin pills. I find the worst for me is when I go east, which it means you're trying to get to sleep when your body doesn't want to. And I'll take a couple of melatonin pills for the first 2 or 3 days, about an hour before I want to go to sleep. And I find that helps personally in terms of the old jet lag, because it's telling the body then that that's like sunlight coming in darkness coming in, and it's time to go to sleep.
Great, that's a good tip. That's a great tip.
Yeah. And gosh, what else? There's so many things, really.
Graham Codrington, a great international speaker that we know, he has said that he starts to add an extra day now, just because he realized he was traveling the world and not seeing any part of the world.
Sure.
That he sometimes, if he's going somewhere, maybe he's going to he's from South Africa. If he's going somewhere, he takes an extra day just to do sightseeing and stuff.
I must say, I tend to do that these days as well, and that's a great thing to do. And something else, by the way, wherever you're going in the world for the first time, please see if there's a speaking association there that's a member of the GSF, and get in touch with them first. I remember when I very, very first went to Singapore, I got in touch with the speaking association there. I said, look, could I come in a day early, and could I give my speech, and would you critique it for me to see if it works in your culture? And they were over the moon to do it. And from that moment on, they were helping me. They were recommending potential clients and all sorts. It's Brilliant. A great community we're in, and it is literally all over the world.
Yeah, so the GSF is the Global Speakers Federation, and the PSA, so many acronyms, Professional Speaking Association, the NSA, which is the American the National Speakers Association. There's groups of these all over the world, and you can actually, I'm part of them, and then therefore you can contact people. So speakers are not like other business people. We actually, the truth is that in some ways, me and you are competitors, Roger.
In some ways,
but as speakers, we actually help each other.
Absolutely.
It's a nice industry like that. You know what I mean?
I've never come across an industry like it, Lee. I don't know about you, where everyone helps everyone else. It's just remarkable. And of course, I think there is no better referral than from a fellow speaker. If you've done a good gig, next morning at breakfast, the organisers there, they may say to you, that was brilliant. Who shall we have next year? And I'm going to go Lee Jackson or whatever. And that's the best recommendation you can get. So
that's great. Brilliant
stuff. Could I give one other final tip,
please.
if I may, just internationally? If you are going anywhere where that is a Muslim country, or indeed where there's a big Muslim population, and one of the things I didn't realize for a while was that India, despite partition and Pakistan being there, has the second largest Muslim population in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never, ever, ever offer to shake hands with a woman. Leave it to them. Some will, an awful lot won't. But there is nothing worse than you standing there with your hand out and she's not responding to that. And it's very embarrassing on all sides. Just don't offer to shake hands with a woman, and if you've got any doubt at all, if you're a fella.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's great advice. I was doing a big event in the north of England, and it was an awards event, and I was getting lots of people ready for their awards event, and there was a couple of Muslim women there. And of course, what was happening was there was a queue of people shaking hands. So they got the award and they shook hands with 12 people. And as part of the preparation, she said, well, in my culture, I don't shake hands with men.
That's right.
And so we actually rearranged the whole thing around that, just to be culturally sensitive to her, really,
Yeah, sure.
So little things like that are good. But, you can ring the British Embassy in these countries, can't you? You can get advice from people. The Department of Trade and Industry, the DTI, are helpful sometimes to do that. There's lots of help available, isn't there?
Absolutely.
That's great.
And I guess the other thing is, if you do tell stories, make sure they will be understood where you are. I hate to say this, but there's a lot of American speakers I've come across where they're telling stories. I remember, again, Singapore, funnily enough, I didn't understand what he was talking about. It was to do with American stuff that I didn't know anything about, Okay. And I'm sure that applied to the audience. So, you can't talk about things that people will not understand, or if you're going to, think about it first and rephrase it in a way that would be acceptable. But again, that's where the local speaking association will give you advice.
Absolutely. That's great stuff. Fantastic advice, Roger. Tell people, how can they get hold of you, Roger, if they want to connect with you and see your website and that kind of thing?
Oh, dead easy. Website is Roger Harrop. That's Roger, ROGERHARROP.com. My email is roger@rogerharrop.com, so it couldn't be easier. And I will always answer. If there's anything I can help with, just drop us an email and I will respond.
That's great. Thank you so much, Roger. You've given a lot to the speaking community, and I've learned so much from you, and it's always good. It's always good to chat. So thanks for giving on this podcast, Get Good at Presenting. Thank you, Roger.
Lee, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks again.
Cheers now. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Get Good at Presenting podcast with your host, Lee Jackson. If you'd like to know more about Lee's work as a motivational keynote speaker and presentation coach, visit his website at leejackson.biz. That's leejackson.biz.